What's up, Bucs Squad? I'm your host, Jaron Spor. I'm going to tell you why the Mike McDaniel stuff is just getting started.
What's up, Bucs Squad? Marcus Ray. Shout out to the Dayton Flyers. I'm going to tell you why a good coordinator doesn't always mean good head coach.
And I'm Ryan Lavoie, and I'll tell you why the search for a new offensive coordinator is off to an underwhelming start.
Hey, Tampa Bay, it's the Buccaneers squad. Everything Tampa Bay Buccaneers every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of the Sunshine State, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. With a touch of the Buccaneer way, the Buccaneer Squad Show starts now.
What's up, Bucs Squad? Real quick, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Like I said, I'm your host, Jaron. We've got a packed show for you today. We're going to break down the Mike McDaniel rumors because apparently he's taking a lot of visits this week, but not to Tampa. So we'll talk about what that all means. Then we're going to dive into all the coaching moves. The funny thing is, last Wednesday, we did our live, and we're like, hey, we expect some changes. Grizzard, who else? We're not really sure. And then it was everyone pretty much on Thursday that got let go. So we'll break that down. And then has the Bucs championship window closed? We'll break that down. And before wrapping it up with a wild card weekend, no pun intended. But first, let's dive into the Mike McDaniel rumors. It was reported that he is going to take some head coaching interviews with the Browns, Falcons, Titans, and Ravens. He's also scheduled to interview for the Lions offensive coordinator job. So Tampa was not mentioned in that response. Now, Jeff Darlington mentioned in his post that, hey, that does not mean Tampa's going to be in it. He is going to take his time throughout the process. There's probably going to be more OC jobs opening. He's going to probably look at a lot of them, and he thinks Tampa will be one of them. I will say this. If you don't get an interview, I think it's an epic fail because, and Ryan's going to kind of go through some of the OCs that they've at least interviewed right now or reportedly interviewed or will interview this week. It's been an underwhelming list. Like you mentioned, like Zach Robinson is on that list, and it's like we just saw him kind of get benched, aka as the Falcons offense coordinator at times this past season. Now they played well at the end of the year, so and that one, I guess I see the background because of the McVay tree, and that's where Baker did well, and that's where Liam Cohen and all that stuff. But still, just kind of been underwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the Jeff Darlington tweet, which was important because he was basically like, hey, Mike McDaniel is going to take his head coaching opportunities. Of course, he's going to take those interviews. If he can find another head coaching job, he will take that, as you should. And then once it becomes clear he's not going to become a head coach again right off the Dolphins firing, then he will look at his offensive coordinator opportunity. So that has to be kept in mind. And again, as you mentioned, most of those jobs he's interviewing for are the head coaching jobs right now. But if you don't end up with an interview with him, who is going to be the highest prized offensive coordinating option, should he not get a head coaching job again, then that's a disappointment because you feel that Tampa has, and rightly so, a lot to work with on the offensive side of the ball, from the wide receivers we've talked about, from a young running back that looks very good, to a quarterback that put up huge numbers in 2024, an offense that put up huge numbers. They were fourth in the league in total offense in 2024. So a proof of concept, this offense can be a top 5 offense in the NFL. If you don't get an interview from Mike McDaniel, the prime candidate, that would be incredibly disappointing. There's 5 candidates that the Bucs have either already interviewed or have been reported as of 9 o'clock Eastern tonight to interview. So I just want to take Zach Robinson first. You guys take the others, or we'll circle back. But Zach Robinson's probably the most interesting, or at least most info on somebody that we have in terms of the guys the Bucs are looking at, because there's 2 parts to this. One is the part where, yeah, he was in this division the last 2 years doing a pretty underwhelming job with the Falcons. Falcons fans would not have wanted him back if Raheem Morris had stayed. In his 2 years in Atlanta, in 2024, they were 6th in total offense, but just 14th in scoring. This year, they were 14th in total offense, 24th in scoring. So 2 straight years where the yards did better than points. So there's clearly something going on in the red zone there, not maximizing the opportunities. Of course, they had some great skill position players here the last 2 years. The quarterback situation was questionable, but clearly a performance that was underwhelming. Now, the part that interests the Bucs is not going to be the last 2 years. It's going to be the part where he was the pass game coordinator for Baker Mayfield in his short time in the Rams, with the Rams. And what went really well for the Bucs over the last few years with Baker Mayfield was when they went to Liam Cohen, and he was the full-fledged offensive coordinator for the brief stint that Baker Mayfield was in LA. So the argument for him would be, hey, this is the other guy working with Baker Mayfield in the time that he spent the few weeks that revitalized his career, saved his career in Los Angeles. But the counterpoint is that when he's been the full-fledged offensive coordinator for a team that had plenty good offensive skill position players, it did not go very well with the Rams. Or with the Falcons, excuse me. So he's going to be someone that I think the Bucs are going to probably play the long game with. I'm not saying he'll be the OC, but I'm saying that time with Baker is going to be noteworthy to them. And again, there's other names we'll talk about in a moment, but just Zach Robinson's interesting, maybe not in all the kind of the good ways, but a name I think definitely going to be keeping an eye on in the next week or two.
I think when it comes to Mike McDaniel, that he's a sexy name. Like, sexy doesn't always mean the right name. It just means a guy that should be on the list. And when you've been a head coach in the National Football League, you don't really want to go back to being a coordinator. So obviously he's going to explore his options as a head coach. And when you fail as a head coach in his short tenure, you don't always get a next at-bat as a head coach. So like Harbaugh, with the Ravens, he was there for a long time. So he's not going back to being a special teams coordinator. Okay, so he's going to get a head job, but a guy like McDaniel may have to prove his worth, because sometimes when you come from those trees, long time ago there was the Mike Holmgren tree, and then you saw guys like Gruden and everybody else come from the tree. You can go back to the 91 staff, 92 Packers, and see all the guys. All right, but at the same time. And that kind of came from the Bill Walsh tree, I'm sorry. But at the same time, Tony Dungy tried to create a tree too. And he tried to do it for the African-American head coaches. Obviously, Mike Tomlin comes from that. He spent time with Tampa. He was 1 year as a coordinator and then 19 years as a head coach, won the Super Bowl. Raheem Morris comes from that tree too. So when you see these trees, I think sometimes we kind of become prisoners of the moment and think because – okay, Mike McDaniel, he coached with McVay. He coached with LaFleur. He coached with, so now he's one of the dudes. No, he was just on the staff. So I don't think that the Bucs have to interview McDaniel. I really don't. I think he's a system guy. I think, ever since he graduated from Yale, I think he's ate off the tree of the fruit from the Shanahan family, starting with the daddy Mike. And I'm not, disregarding anything he's done. He was with the Broncos as an assistant. Then he was an offensive as an intern. Then you put 3 years as an offensive assistant with the Texans. Okay. Then you end up with the Redskins, and that's where all of this comes from. Okay. So you got the daddy. So you got Kubiak's the head coach, and now you got all these guys, Sherman and Kyle Shanahan. All these guys, right? So Mike Shanahan's there, Kyle Shanahan, McVay, LaFleur. And if Ike Hilliard doesn't leave, I'm not sure if he even gets that job. So my thing is sometimes I think we just kind of become prisoners of the moment and think that – I'm not saying the guy can't coach, but I don't think he's a slam dunk must talk to guy. The Bucs, this league, you win games with players, flat out players. And unless you're Kurt Cignetti and you have a fifth-year average veteran 23-year-old team, the last three national champions probably have older guys. Michigan had 44 seniors. Ohio State, bunch of seniors last year. Now Indiana's the seniors, and they're talking about all of this 4-star, 5-star Oregon. You need older guys to win. My point is the Bucs have the roster offensively. They need to rebuild the roster defensively, and I think you could almost hire who you want. You don't have to go with McDaniel because McVay is hot. You don't have to hire him because LaFleur blew a 21-3 lead. You don't have to hire a guy that's down with the program. That's what they just did when they hired Josh Grizz. He was a part of the last guy system with Cohen. These system guys, they don't all think the same. They just coach together. McVay got lucky. He got lucky, and he had a squad, and he had an unblockable defensive tackle that we've never seen, and a quarterback who left Detroit, who was still young enough and good enough to go out there and win. They had a roster, and they built it. You had Jalen Ramsey, you had all these people. You need players to win. I think the Bucs need to rebuild on defense. They can hire whoever they want. All these guys can coach, man. But you need players, and you got to stay healthy. So my thing is this. I don't think Mike McDaniel's a slam dunk. I don't even think he was a great head coach, but it's not because he's not a great head coach. It's because Miami just wasn't built to win. And so you only get a short window in this league to win, period, whoever you are. So I don't think you have to talk to him. And I don't think you should wait until he's done going through his 5 interviews as a head coach. I don't think you even wait on him. I think you go find a guy and then you make it work.
I don't disagree because he did struggle as a head coach. And so it's not like, hey, this guy is just this amazing, you have to talk to kind of hire, as you said, Marcus. But my only issue is he is perceived as the top offensive mind out there for all the offensive coordinator positions. Whether that's right or wrong, that's kind of how he's perceived. And so my thinking is, okay, the narrative, and you can say, hey, the narrative doesn't matter, and that's fair too. But the narrative of the top offensive mind with all these loaded weapons offensively that we agree that the Bucs have doesn't even want to consider talking to you. Why? Is it because he doesn't believe in Todd Bowles as a coach? Does he believe that Todd Bowles will probably be fired, which means then he's out of a job? Like, that's where I think when I immediately think, okay, why isn't he even looking at them right? Which, again, they said he might be looking at them, just not this week kind of thing. But again, and I understand that you can say, hey, the narratives don't matter. Just get a coach and you go for it. But that's just my worry is, why is the guy that's the top offensive mind, why is he like, I don't even care to visit them right off the bat, even though they have all these weapons? That tells me that he doesn't believe in the vision of the head coach and might not even believe in the vision of the general manager. And that's what worries me.
Well, yeah, and look, I would, because I'll give you a counterpoint to, you might be 100% correct for certain guys. Maybe Mike McDaniel's one of them, because you think, okay, I want stability of staff. But here's the counterpoint. The Bucs are one of the organizations that have fired their head coach in the past to hire their offensive coordinator. When they fired Lovie Smith, they hired Dirk Cutter. They felt that Jameis Winston would develop if they continued to get coaching from Dirk Cutter. His name was hot at the time, and they went ahead and hired him as a head coach. It did not work very well. Now, they did have a 9-7 season, but other than that, did not work well at all, and Jameis Winston did not become the franchise guy. So the counterpoint would be, if I've got an endangered defensive-minded head coach, if I do my job as an offensive guy and bring a top 5 offense to the table, well, then either we're going to win because the defensive guy is going to figure out his defense, or he doesn't figure out the defense. We go 7-10, 8-9, but I had a top 5 offense, so I'm getting the head coaching job once they fire him. So I think that
that's fair.
It just depends on the individual and what McDaniel wants, what these other guys want. So, again, there's other names to get to, but I mean, again, I would be able to, if I can win that counter argument, then I would again go back to, okay, I've got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. They're older, great. But I got a 950-yard rookie wide receiver. I've got Jalen McMillan also. I've got good running backs. I've got a quarterback that's still got several years left in the league, ideally. I mean, I don't have much to gawk at on offense. I've got the weapons. I got one of the best tackles in the game. I could use some work in the interior of offensive line, but I'm on a very short list of items and ways that I can actually improve that offensive personnel.
I think, Jaron, you asked a great question, Brian, and I think you made a great point. And just real quick, I'll say this. A guy like Mike McDaniel probably doesn't want to work for a defensive head coach, because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is the scoreboard. See, like the head coach is held accountable for the wins and losses. Coordinators are held accountable for what the scoreboard says. So if I'm a coordinator and I score 37 points and lose, that's conflict. I mean, and especially when your head coach is a defensive guy and he calls the plays. So Tampa wouldn't attract a guy like Mike McDaniel right now unless that's his last option, and he'll say, let's go. And another point you made is if the head coach gets let go, then you're out of a job and you're back in the carousel again, interviewing 12 months from now at a spot where you could have took right now. So like Tampa almost having so many weapons, it's attractive, but it can also be a situation that you don't want to touch because you might not want to feed all of those mouths. You might not want to cater to Mike Evans when J-Mac and Emeka are ready to take over the reins. You might think you got a better running back out there than Bucky Irvin. So you have to understand too, when you make these decisions, these are career choices. I mean, these guys get paid a lot of money. It's high risk, high reward. But to your question though, Jaron, I just don't think it's an attractive job from where the Bucs are right now. But they do have the weapons, and I'm sure he could probably get busy. But with a defensive head coach who was getting dialed up defensively and you lost some games, the offense is always going to take the blame.
Well, and how many times have we seen a defensive head coach put handcuffs on an offensive coordinator? So maybe he wants to be aggressive, and they're like, nope, we want to dial it back, or I want to go for it on fourth down at midfield, but no, we're not. We're punting it. So it could be that too. I mean, we talked about that many times this year that it felt like there was chances for them to go for it around midfield, and Todd elected to punt. And so that could all be playing into it as well. But all right, coming up next, offensive coordinator wasn't the only move the Bucs made. They made a plethora of moves. We'll talk about all those coming up next. Well, this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player projections for the first time, trying something new can feel like a challenge. But with Prize Picks, it's always feels good to be right. With high-pressure football matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never slows down, and Prize Picks lets you stay in control. Prize Picks is the daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based on player projections. No drafts, no waiting, just pick more or less and play your way. Getting started on Prize Picks was quick and simple. The app is super easy to navigate. It's made watching games more engaging, especially when following individual player performances. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, Bug Squad, we're back for another segment here. Just a reminder, this is extra content we do twice a week. Doesn't take anything away from what James does. He does a heck of a job. This is something that, especially now that we're in the off season, we're going to do every Monday and Wednesday at 9 Eastern time, p.m. Eastern time. That's the plan. Although next week, good thing to bring this up, next Monday, a week from today, is a national holiday. It's also the national championship college football game. So we're actually going to do ours on Tuesday and Wednesday instead of Monday and Wednesday. But overall, it will typically be Monday and Wednesday. But let's break down the Bucs moves, and if I miss one, let me know, because there was a lot. But Josh Grizzard obviously out as offensive coordinator, fired the special teams coordinator, fired the quarterbacks coach, fired the cornerbacks coach, fired the defensive line coach, and then Tom Moore retired, which there were some legendary stories about him and some great video on him, and the safeties coach retired. So did I miss anyone? Because I think that might have summed it all up. But regardless, there's a lot of holes to be filled on this team, not just on offense or not just on defense, but also on offense. And so the offensive coordinator is the big one that they're going to have to address, because obviously Todd Bowles is the de facto defensive coordinator and he didn't fire himself. So they're not hiring a defensive coordinator. So that's the big one. And I would assume that's the one they want to figure out first, because if Marcus, maybe you can touch on this, but I would assume the offensive coordinator will have a big say on who he wants as his quarterbacks coach and things like that.
Yeah, I think when you know, one of the things when I was in college, the great Lloyd Carr once said, the most important thing a head coach can do is hire great assistants. And I think right now, Todd Bowles and those guys right now are in a pickle where they, if he doesn't pick the right coordinator, he could lose his job next season. And I know some circles were arguing for him to be gone. I think his resume is the only thing that saved him. But if you look back a couple of years ago, I forgot which year it was, but they actually wiped out the entire offensive staff. This is no, the Bucs have become place where the OC, if he has success, becomes a head coach, but the DC, but the head coach is a defensive program. It's a defensive organization. So I just think when you think about the moves that were made, he wiped out, you said, the OC. Josh Grizzard, I think he should have been given a second chance just due to injuries. Like, sometimes you can't always get it done in 1 year. And I said on the show the other night, like, we live in a push-button society where you just want everything right now. I want to win every game now. I want everything to work. But when you have injuries, and then, James not on the show, but he made a great point that when all the guys were healthy, they just couldn't figure out, who got the big piece of chicken. It's like when you got a lot of kids and, daddy's not home, how are you going to divide that food up? And it just never worked out. As far as T-Mac at the special teams coordinator this year, I mean, he has a very good reputation in that league as a coordinator. It just didn't work this year. Primarily on kickoff return coverage. It was pretty bad. And that defense started out on some shorter fields. You're talking about the 35-yard line, sometimes at the 50, and getting kicks blocked. So that's a position you can fill, without feeling like you did somebody dirty. Get them out of here. Josh Grizzard, the jury's still out. I think he's a young guy. He's been in this league for a long time. Thaddeus Lewis, quarterback's coach. Get rid of him too, because I just don't think Baker looked good in the second part of the season. After, I always go back to that Detroit game. It was something about that game that just took the wind out of the Bucs sails. But when you fire offensive coordinators, especially if they bring their guys with them or they have good relationships with people, you want them out. Like, so what the Bucs are doing is going with a clean slate offensively. But the interesting part, though, it wasn't just offense. Like, they didn't clean house. They just went OC, quarterbacks coach. Those guys kind of work hand in hand. Mm-hmm. But they got rid of Kevin Ross, the corners coach, and Nick Rapone, the safeties coach, because that secondary was getting cooked up. I mean, let's just be real. I don't know if it was technique. I don't know if it was a lack of coaching and teaching the scheme. Jaron, you talked about, they were in cover 2, and everybody thought Dean got beat, and he played the coverage right, and the young safety didn't. And so when those guys have communication breakdowns, I mean, hey, stuff like this happens. I'll give you one more. Charlie Strong is very interesting. 12 months ago, when I was at Michigan's practice, Michigan versus Alabama, in the Outback Bowl, Charlie Strong, I'm a commentator for another network. So Charlie Strong was a commentator too. We're standing there talking, and I was like, hey, coach, are you done? Are you just going to commentate? Oh, yeah, I like it. I'm going to call a few games. And 30 days later, he was a D-line coach. He was actually interviewing for the job. And I was very surprised. And I was thinking, hey, coach, you just told me you're going to commentate. Now you're back in it. That D-line didn't really bust a great in the second part of the season. So I can see why you get rid of Charlie Strong. I don't even know if he's a D-line coach for real anyways. Tom Moore was old. So I went through the list of the guys that they let go for obvious reasons. But I was very surprised, well, not surprised, that Larry Foote was able to stay. I think they should move him from outside linebackers back to inside. I think he can get, if he played that position, and I think that if he coaches Levante David one more year, they draft a linebacker. I think if Larry Foote was coaching the inside backers, we would have saw better production.
Yeah, so look, I mean, when you go 8-9, right, and I don't want to intrude on the segment we'll do in just a moment, but when we're talking about windows and how the team is built to function well right now. It's not built to be a progressing workmanlike from ashes to playoffs or that sort of thing. It is built to be a playoff team right now. And so when you don't achieve that, there are going to be coaches that have to answer for that. So when you construct an offense that was top 5 in the league the previous year, and then the next season you can't find out or you can't delineate the offensive production being better or worse depending on the personnel that's in there, meaning when they were injured, they were as good or better than they were when they were healthy. They're going to have some coaches responsible for that. And so that's why I still think that the OC is a fair place to look, was a fair firing, and going to be someone that they're going to have to get right, obviously, in the next coaching staff. But you mentioned it, again, the defensive weaknesses were all guys that were removed, right? And just 1 year of Charlie Strong, defensive line coach. Well, there's not a big resume. I think that talking about Nick Rapone and Kevin Ross is a different situation because those are guys with Todd Bowles for a long time. I mean, those are not just personnel decisions. Those are personal decisions for Todd Bowles, who had Temple relationships with those two guys. So that is a big admission of, man, things have got to be way different because those guys have been with Todd for a long time. So on one hand, I do appreciate that because there is a need to improve that defense, right? Again, both sides of the ball underwhelmed for different reasons. So there had to be personnel changes. It's also why I said in the previous show, Jason Light will have to do a good job with the actual players part of it in the offseason. But there is a coaching part of it too. And you can't get from a 10-win team, 9-win team winning the division to an 8-win team that slid so miserably at the end of the season, losing 7 out of 9. So again, I think it's going to be really interesting. I try not to harp on the OC part of it because, again, these are position coaches that probably are elevated a little bit more when you have a head coach calling defense, right? Like that there is more responsibility that the head coach is inherently taking on from the play calling part of it, but then there is going to be, okay, he still can't do everything, so you're going to have a bunch of position coaches that are very important for what you're doing too. So again, I look at it and say that those positions are certainly important, and I appreciate the honesty that Todd Bowles had with trying to make some replacements with guys that he's worked with for a long time. But of course, that offensive coordinator job is going to be the kind of the flashy thing that we probably break down a little bit more throughout the offseason because, again, it fluctuated so wildly from 24 to 25 that there's just a lot to say on that.
And to answer your question earlier, Marcus, Charlie Strong early in his career was a defensive line coach, but shifted to linebackers early 2000s. Has basically been a linebacker coach when he was a defensive coach ever since then. So he had some early stints there. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, as you mentioned, Ryan, those two coaches had been with Todd for a long time. So that makes me think that it was one of those things that either Light or the Glazers just said, you're making this, and this move, and you better hit it because it's your last year. Like it almost felt like that. Now, I would have also thought they would have said, and you're not calling the defense anymore or something like that. But maybe that was the one thing he's like, hey, I'll make all these moves, but I'm calling the defense. And that might have been it. But it did feel like that was kind of his thing, which was, hey, you're making all these moves. And if you don't make the moves, you're not going to be here anymore. And so that's kind of my thought process with it. I was going to bring up this topic if Bowles got fired, but I think we can still bring it up and talk about it because of all the coaching moves that they've made. I see a lot of people that are like, oh, we'll just go grab this coach from the Ravens or from grab this coach from the 49ers or whoever. This isn't like, and Marcus, you can definitely touch on this a little more. This isn't like college where it's like, man, I'm an up and coming, really good coach at South Florida. Auburn is a better job. I'm going to go to Auburn. Yeah, there's some things that are better jobs in terms of like, hey, they have better players right now, but all NFL franchises are pretty much on the same playing field. It's not one of those things where, hey, I'm the head coach of the Buccaneers, but one day I will be the coach of the Colts. It's not like that. Like they're all on the same level. And so you're not going to be able to just say, hey, come coach for me. And these guys will be like, man, that's an upgrade. I'm going to go. So that's why I don't like when I see a lot of comments where, oh, just go get that guy. Well, it's not college. You can't just go get that guy.
Yeah, no, I'll just say that I think that there's so many moves that would be lateral in that situation, and it's easier to delineate in college what would be an upgrade, but to go OC from somewhere to OC somewhere else, well, that doesn't usually make a lot of sense. Head coach somewhere else, no, does not make a lot of sense. Usually you are talking about promoting someone that was a pass game coordinator or a run game coordinator, or you are talking about getting someone that was fired from the head coaching role, a la Mike McDaniel, because they are having to take a downgrade. So it's about necessity of what those guys are trying to either elevate their careers or they're trying to recover their careers. But there's not usually like, oh, I think the Bucs are just so much better right now offensively than, the Ravens or whoever we're talking about. Because, again, it really is all within the realm of possibility that if you do a good enough job with the personnel that you have, you can elevate yourself at all these 32 NFL coordinating jobs. And then again, with head coach, if you're doing a good job, you're probably already building a playoff team and that sort of thing.
Just to talk about one example that I'm talking about is someone said we need to go get Josh McDaniels, and they did clarify it is McDaniels and not Mike McDaniel. But that you're not getting him to leave the Patriots as the OC to be the OC at the Bucs. If he was coming to be the head coach, maybe he ain't leaving what the Patriots to do that is what I was referring to. Go ahead, Marcus.
Yeah, unless you double his salary or pay him an astronomical number. I mean, money talks, and everything else runs the marathon. I think that Todd Bowles was given an ultimatum. I really think he got sat down and they told him, you're going to have to make some staff changes, and we really want you to make them here, here, and here. And I don't think they would tell him to go hire a coordinator and to demote himself. And the reason I'm going to say that is because he has success as a coordinator in that same organization. So, I mean, that's what got him the head job. So they think and still believe that's his baby. I don't know if you can do it as a head coach. I've never been a fan of head coach calling plays offensively or defensively. But when you look at some of the positions that really struggled, I mean, that secondary struggled. That D-line, they struggled. Linebackers, Larry and those guys, he was with them. Wilkson, those guys were out there at Arizona 10 years ago. So you have to understand, Bowles is loyal to his guys, but as you mentioned, Ryan, it is personal, but it's also business. And when it comes to business, nothing is personal. And so if he has to I guess my point is, it's either me or you. And chances are I'll get rid of you before I get rid of me, regardless of how long you've been coaching with me. And Todd Bowles is a secondary guy. See, when you call the defense, I think you should actually be a position coach too. And you really can't do that as a head coach. But I think he's going to pay particular attention to the secondary in this offseason with technique, with communication, alignment, assignment, adjustment. I really think he's going to become a position coach from the head coach realm defensively.
Yeah, and it's possible the reason why they're not hiring a quarterback coach yet is maybe they want the offensive coordinator to also be the quarterback coach, to your point, Marcus. So, all right, coming up next, has the Bucs championship window closed? We'll break it down. Well, the wild card round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like the most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boosts let you lean into the game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boosts give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks, then apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. All right, thank you for watching us here over on Locked On Bucs. This is the Bucs Squad Show. Let's talk about the Tampa Bay Bucs championship window. Has it come to a close? Ryan kind of referenced it last segment, but I agree with you. I think you're in that window right now because you have your franchise guy. You have the offensive talent around him. Yes, you need to still get the offensive line figured out. You're at the point now where it's like, man, get a couple pieces to make the defense at least decent. It doesn't have to be now the 85 Bears. Just get them to be a top 15, top 12 unit. And with the offensive talent you have, as long as you get a good coordinator that can do everything, you should have a team that can compete for a championship. And you're in an easier division. Now, with that being said, and we'll get to it more in the next segment, the Panthers, I think, proved in this playoff game they're coming. And they're not going to be this easy team to push away. Or you could say they already arrived since they technically won the division. So I still think that overall the division is fairly easy. So you'll at least have that in your back pocket. So I think your window's here. And I don't see a dominant team in the NFC. I see several very good teams, but I don't see a dominant team in the NFC. man, I think your next 2 to 3 years, that's your time.
So I would not have thought when the Bucs signed Tom Brady that they would have a realistic window after Tom Brady. They were going to have to rebuild certain things. They certainly brought in some of Brady's guys that were at the ends of their careers, and the conventional wisdom was going to be you're going to go all in with Brady because you actually have a good roster, despite the fact that you went 7-9. It's just Jameis Winston threw 30 interceptions. And you know what? It's going to be pretty hard to recover from 30 interceptions. So we believe we've got a good team. We bring in Brady. We'll go for it right now. They did. They won a Super Bowl. The 21 team was damn good too. Just did not get through the Rams, who ended up winning the Super Bowl. But I digress. That once Brady went, you thought that they were probably going to return to a non-playoff team. Well, they struck some gold with Baker. That turns out the Browns were wrong about him, and that you can, with Baker Mayfield at quarterback, as they did in 2024, have a top 5 offense in the league. That's possible. So if I pair that with the defensive-minded head coach and the defense that Tampa first had with Bowles, not the last couple of years of defense, but the Bowles defense that was the Brady defense plus maybe the first year or so of Bowles being the head coach, if I have those two things together, then I am a Super Bowl threat because there is no dynasty in the NFC. The Eagles team that just lost this weekend in the first round, that had won the Super Bowl the year before, well, the year before that, they had lost to the Bucs in the playoffs in 2023 with Baker Mayfield at quarterback. So if I combine all those things, plus by the way, 5-1 to start this year, I have a team that still has a window. Now, did they execute it well this year? No. Have they done a good enough job in the playoffs the last couple of seasons? Well, no. But the ingredients are there. They don't have to fundamentally change their roster. They don't have to get in a new quarterback. They don't have to bring in 10 new X factor players. They need tweaks. They need a little better defensive line. They need healthier Elijah Cansey, but they need more pass rush. They need a better secondary, and they need better coaching. And again, we've all had our agreements and disagreements on how they get that. But the point is they have the offensive personnel they like. They've got ingredients on defense, but they need a few upgrades, and they need upgrades to the coaching staff. So I think the window, to answer your question, is pretty much on the shoulders of how well that they draft and develop, in particular, their defense in the next year or two. Because if they get Tyke Smith to be a Pro Bowl caliber corner/safety, if they finally find a pass rusher that can deliver double-digit sacks on a frequent basis, like what Shaq Barrett did for a couple seasons, if they find the heir apparent to Levante David, if they do those things on defense, they've got other great stuff around it. And they've got the offense that I think can last for several more years. So to me, it's kind of hard to put a timestamp on it because, like I said, I just gave you a couple ifs for how long it could go. But if those things happen, then you can last through the end of Baker Mayfield's career. So however long you think Baker Mayfield can play, whether at a high level, whether it be 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, take your pick, depending on injuries, all that sort of thing, that's how long your window can be.
And when you say window, I mean, are we talking about a crack window or a wide open window, Jaron? Because, I thought this team this year was going to be a championship caliber team. You know, injuries may have changed that. Maybe the OC, whatever it was, maybe Todd Bowles getting dialed up, was another thing. But if we're going just right into 2026, I think there's only one game on the schedule that might be a gimme, and that's the Browns. I mean, there's no guarantee. After watching them lose to the Saints and the Falcons in back-to-back weeks, you almost can't trust the Bucs right now. And I think it really depends on who they hire on offense and how well they play on defense. I mean, a championship, when you watch these games this past weekend, the Bucs would have got slaughtered by any one of those teams. I mean, they would have went in Carolina and lost in the playoffs, the way Carolina looked offensively. So, I mean, I don't think a championship's coming anytime soon. You use the key word, Ryan, ingredients. I like ingredients. But here's the problem when you got all the ingredients and you don't have the recipe. I mean, because you still got to cook it up. So I look at their schedule. They're at the Ravens. They're at the Bears. I don't know if you can go into Cincinnati and win. At Detroit. So outside of their own division, you got the Packers, the Vikings, the Steelers. Probably can get Dallas, depending on what it is. Chargers and Rams. I mean, you could have a losing season next year. So I think depending on who the next head coach will be in 12 months, what he does with his 2 or 3 years that they're going to give him, that's going to really dictate what the window is as far as winning a championship. But when you watch Denver or Seattle, I'm talking about not the Seattle that the Bucs beat. I'm talking about the Seattle right now where Sam Darnold finally found his arm. And when you look at the Patriots defense, I mean, the Bucs aren't playing lights out on either side of the ball. I mean, you have to pick one. Either you're going to play lights out on offense or defense. But if you can't do it, if you're somewhere in the middle there, what screams championship? Just because you have talent? No, you have to go out and play the game. I mean, so we're watching teams like Denver, Chicago. I mean, the Bucs don't even have we're going to come back from 21-3 and beat you because that's what we've done 6 times this year with our quarterback. Caleb Williams is better than Baker Mayfield. Is Baker Mayfield really a top 10 quarterback? I mean, can he play? Yeah, but is he a guy that can win you a Super Bowl? He's not Tom Brady. He's not. And that was a COVID year anyway. So I don't really know. I can't give you a timestamp either, Jaron, on the window of winning the championship. I think it depends on the next head coach and then making some changes on defense, and maybe some of those other teams have to fall off in the NFC.
And I think you make a great point because there's a difference between the window being wide open and being cracked. And so I would say right now it's open, but it's barely open. And I think I say that because it's because of Todd Bowles as the head coach. I think if you would have told me that they just hired John Harbaugh to be the head coach, that window's a little more open, in my opinion. Now, they still have the weaknesses and stuff like that they would have to correct, but I just trust him as a head coach more than I trust Todd Bowles. And so I would say, hey, that window's a little more open. And so I agree with you, Marcus, that, yes, I think the window's slightly open right now, but after they let go of Bowles, which we think is going to probably happen after this year, hey, hopefully he proves us wrong because that means they had a great season. But that probably is going to happen right now. Then it will be, okay, who do they hire? Because that coach might now open the window even more than what it is. And as you said, can Baker win a Super Bowl? That's a great question that hasn't been answered yet. I think Baker is one of those quarterbacks that can win a Super Bowl if you put a really good roster around him. That's why I'm not paying him $60 million. I've said this. I'm not paying him, 50, whatever, the highest paid quarterback. I'm not doing that. But there's several quarterbacks I feel that way for. Like, Patrick Mahomes, give him the most money, that's fine. Like Josh Allen, and he hasn't even proved to win it yet, but hey, if you want to pay him, he's a guy that can carry a team to a Super Bowl, in my opinion. Joe Burrow, we've seen him take a Bengals team to the Super Bowl, and they didn't win. Those kind of guys are different. That's maybe 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the NFL. Then you have about 10 that if you get them some weapons, you get them a really good defense. We've seen what C.J. Stroud is doing with the Texans. I think he's kind of in that category. And they're only up 1 right now at half against the Steelers. But you get him a really good defense. You get him some weapons. He could manage you to a Super Bowl. Is he going to win it every year? No, but could he manage you to? And I think that's where Baker lies, right there in that category.
And again, I think that's why I say, like, if you get the other parts right, because to both of your points, like, I'm not just saying as a blanket statement, oh yeah, it's wide open, they can win it next year. I'm saying that they got to get personnel decisions right on defense. They've got to hire the right offensive coordinator. And then you put yourself back in the 10-11 win mark. It's just a shame because this NFC, really this whole playoffs this year is so wide open, it can make anyone a believer. And so that's why I'm saying there's no dominant force to prevent you. Like, man, that team just can't beat them. Just they can't match up, can't do that. Well, again, I use the Eagles as an example because in 22 they lost Super Bowl to the Chiefs. In 24 they beat the Chiefs in Super Bowl. So in between what they do, they lost the Bucs in 23. And it's like, oh, Jalen Hurts can't do this and all this. And then they won the Super Bowl next year. And so my point is, if you're reminiscing on that, if you've got that in you with this head coach, with this quarterback, with a lot of the personnel you have, you're in range. But if you hire the wrong OC and you don't improve defensively, that, to Marcus's point, yeah, you'll go 5-12 or some awful thing next year, 4-13, and you'll be a top 10 draft pick, and you will have a new head coach, and then it's rebuild. Then it's goodbye to some of your franchise stalwarts. I think the Bucs have done. That's why I keep talking about the heir apparent to Lavoie David. They've got a good guy beside Vita Vea to be a nose tackle at Kalijah Kancey. They've got a really good wide receiver, I think, in Emeka Egbuka to replace Mike Evans and or Chris Godwin once they phase all the way out. When you can replace your franchise guys, then you're on the right track of not having the window closed. But they don't have the Lavoie David replacement. They still don't have an elite corner. And then again, we've talked about the coaching stuff. And so I think, again, like there's a scenario, it's two roads diverge. And that's why people wanted to go ahead and say goodbye to Bowles, because they can feel that there are some guys on this team like Vita Vea, like Mike Evans, that could be around a couple more years that are still playing at a high level. But if they move on and you don't have a coaching situation that you like and you don't have more talent around them, then it will be game over. Then we will be full rebuild mode.
All right, coming next, we're going to go around the NFL, look at the scores from a wild card weekend. We'll also talk about, as I mentioned, the Texans and the Steelers are playing right now, but we'll break all that down coming up next. Well, what if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action, so when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play-by-play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. All right, Bucs Squad, we're back for one final segment here. Reminder, this is just extra content. Doesn't take anything away from what James does. He does a great job daily giving you content, something we do twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays. 9 Eastern time, p.m. Eastern time, except for next Monday, it'll be Tuesday and Wednesday. So mark your calendar for that. But let's dive into the wild card weekend. There were several good games. I'm only going to take one and let you guys kind of talk about the others. But Chicago and Green Bay was the one that I got to watch bits and pieces of just about all of them. But that's the one I got to actually watch majority of. And, man, it looked like the Bears were going to Bears. They fall down big at home. Fans are upset, all this. And they kept fighting back. And I thought the interesting thing was, because we've seen this over the years, the Bears constantly fold in these moments. But it seems like this is a new team, a new head coach, a new mentality. Because I don't know if y'all watched that game, but in the third quarter, they showed a tweet from Micah Parsons. And it said, great. It said something like, great work, but we know this is a team that if you don't put them away, they're going to keep fighting. And that's exactly what happened. And then they throw the game-winning touchdown. They throw the pick down in the red zone, and it's like, oh, the game's over. And then, of course, they hit the two big plays. An incredible throw by Caleb on, 4th and 5, down 11, where if he doesn't make that throw, game's over. The Packers are on. So that was a wild game. It was my favorite game of the weekend.
Go ahead, Marcus.
Well, for me, I watched that game. I was actually in Michigan. My son had we go to Detroit every weekend for 7-on-7, and we're watching the game. And I actually went to bed when it was 21-3, and then I came back out and watched the third quarter, and I thought the Bears missed some opportunities down in the red zone to really close the gap a lot sooner. But you could sense how the Packers were cracking. To me, the Packers are like a watermelon. They're big, but they crack easy, and they taste good. So the Bears knew that. And they were talking about the 6 comebacks, fourth quarter comebacks by Caleb Williams. And I'm watching the game in the third quarter. But once the Packers threw the little bubble pass out to the outside and scored and went up 11, I went to bed. And I heard some cheering, and I was like, yeah, Bears aren't coming back. They had that soft schedule. And, I know the Packers were favored by 1.5. And I looked up, game over the next morning, and the Packers won. And I really was thinking, like, to your point, Jaron, going back to the Bucs, you said they don't have an identity. Well, the Bears do. They run the ball. They have a hot shot quarterback that'll make some plays, but they're going to come back and beat you. That's just what it is. That's what they do. That's their identity. I think their initial game plan is average. They go in the locker room, they switch it up. Somehow, some light switch comes on defensively, and then they suffocate people. And it's been their mantra and their deal. But the one game I thought for me that was very interesting was the Rams and the Panthers. I just thought the Panthers played like a first place team. They played like they deserved that home game, even though I'm not a big fan of a better record team going on the road, division winner or not. And, Bryce made some throws. They scored a lot more points than I thought they did. And they were able to keep pace with the high-flying Rams. And as the Panthers do, they found a way to lose. Very, very intrigued with that. But the best game for me was the Bills and the Jaguars. I mean, you want to talk about, Josh Allen, banged up hand. I mean, he hyperextended his knee. He probably was concussed. I mean, he's just a big statue of a quarterback. He's tougher than nails, makes plays with his legs. He's feeling all the pressure without all the big-name quarterbacks in the AFC, the Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. Those guys aren't in his way. And he willed his team to win on the road versus a Jacksonville team that I thought actually outplayed the Bills. And they just found a way to lose because Jacksonville's just not there yet. But for me, that was the game. I mean, I'm not sure about you, Ryan. That was the game. I watched a little bit of the 49ers and the Eagles. The Eagles lost me 2 months ago when they lost a 3-score lead to Dallas. The Eagles just is a Super Bowl team that's on a honeymoon hangover. And that happens. They're just not the same. And I think people figured them out. And then I hated to see my boy Jimmy Harbaugh get took up top. They couldn't do anything with those Patriots. It was a little Ohio State, Michigan head coach kind of thing going on. I wasn't cheering for Vrabel at all. But at the same token, I thought the Patriots defense just looked so lights out that, these playoffs are just so wide open. I think any one of these teams can win the Super Bowl. That's what's going to make it fun to watch and analyze. But I thought that the Bills-Jaguars was just a slugfest. I've always been a Trevor Lawrence kind of fan, even back in high school, Clemson. So just to watch him do that with that team and Cohen and Liam and those guys just making stuff happen. But I don't know, Ryan, man. I just think it's wide open. But I wouldn't bet against those Patriots right now, and I definitely wouldn't bet against Chicago in the second half.
Yeah, there's some fascinating stuff going on for sure. I was able to fortunately watch just about all of it this weekend. And I'll tell you what, just the first 4 games in particular, everything prior to New England and Los Angeles was just unbelievably good stuff. I mean, the quality of the game could have changed, I guess, but the proximity of the teams, what was required in the fourth quarter to win those games was just great stuff. And, I'll start with that Buffalo and Jacksonville game because I just found that so fascinating because Josh Allen is kind of the holdovers of all the elite quarterbacks we've talked about that missed the playoffs. Josh Allen's the one guy that got in the AFC, but he's got to be on the road. He's the 6th seed. He's got to play really good teams on the road. Officially, with the Patriots winning last night, they cannot play a playoff game in Buffalo, so Highmark Stadium is officially closed now. They're going to go into a new stadium next year. And so, just being able to – would that be the most Bills thing to finally go back to the Super Bowl with a bunch of road games and being the underdog? I guess because so much was expected of them the last few years. You're going to be the one to dethrone Mahomes. It's just a matter of time. You're going to figure it out. And then they never could after beating him in the regular season time and time and time again. So, I think they took a young Jacksonville team to task. I was still impressed and just year one of that program for Liam Cohen. So, again, I think that they'll be back. But, again, I was impressed with Buffalo and their fortitude because there was some Sean McDermott stuff if they lost that people were whispering like, oh, how many times can you lose early in the playoffs with Josh Allen and survive? So, I mean, there was some interesting commentary with that I'm not sure is completely gone with one playoff win, but certainly helped. The 49ers-Eagles game, again, you mentioned it, Marcus. The Eagles just did not look right. The really halfway point of the season on their offense. And just, I don't know if I've seen a good team yip with their head coach so much. I mean, just several guys just getting in arguments, particularly A.J. Brown, just yipping. And I mean, that can't be fully healthy. I know we're trying to have a great tenacity. I know we're trying to have leadership. I know we're trying to, again, have someone that inspires you to be better. But I just don't think full-fledged yelling at the head coach time and time again is great for a locker room. And the Philly offense just never got off the ground in the second half of the season. And then I will say about the Patriots and Chargers is that, I think that while that was the most rugged game of the week so far, I know the Texans and Steelers are not exactly opening up the offenses thus far, but while that was the most rugged game of the weekend, I think that gave validity to what we were talking about with, the Patriots on a piece of paper have the easiest schedule, and I can't tell you how long. But just watch them. Watch the things that they do. They're well coached. They got a good defense. Drake May is awesome, but he doesn't have to be awesome for them to win, and that's exactly what happened last night. And again, Mike Vrabel's just a heck of a coach. Brian Callahan's the name that's come up for the Bucs OC, the fired Titans coach. I still can't believe the Titans fired Vrabel for their GM's bad decision making, and they're going to be regretting that for a long time because Vrabel's going to do a continually great job in New England.
And
you guys,
one more
go ahead. Yeah.
One more point. I actually think that Buffalo is my favorite, and here's why. All those great quarterbacks that aren't in the playoffs, he beat them in the regular season. He beat Baltimore. Okay, he went out there. He beat Kansas City. He beat Carolina. He's beaten playoff teams. Josh Allen, okay, lost to New England, but beat Tampa Bay. Lost to Houston. That's going to be a tricky one. I think Houston's the one team that probably has Buffalo's number, but he beat Aaron Rodgers. He beat Joe Burrow. He beat Drake May. Okay. And so I just think with all those wins in the regular season, he is the man to beat right now, even if it's on the road.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to say the one thing that we did notice in this wild card weekend, except for the Green Bay and Chicago game, was I felt a lot of the younger teams outperformed the more veteran teams, but you could tell the veteran teams had been in the postseason and they hadn't. So like the Rams and the Panthers, I thought the Panthers might have outplayed the Rams. But on the flip side, Stafford and them have been there, done that. Ryan, you mentioned the and Marcus, you actually mentioned it too, where the Jaguars outplayed the Bills, but Josh Allen and them have been there, and you could tell that in clutch moments that they've been there. And that's one reason why I was so impressed with the Patriots. And I know the Chargers haven't been there either, but the Patriots haven't either. And you could see early, like May just did not look like May from the season, and now it's all, they bring up the regular season, how easy the schedule was, and are they legit? And yet they just found a way to win and win, with great defense, held the Chargers to 3 points. Scored 16 points, and now you can relax as a younger team and get ready for the next round. And so I just thought overall this was a weekend of the older teams show that they had that experience. And so that makes me, if you're a fan of those younger teams, a little confident heading into next year because now you got one under your belt.
Here's the thing.
Go ahead, Marcus.
Hold on. Yeah. Just watch this. If you're a young team or a young quarterback, the only way you're going to win the Super Bowl is if you have a running game and a great defense. That's how Tom Brady won his first one, and that's how Ben Roethlisberger won his first one. I mean, that's the only recipe. Even if you're talented and you got great numbers, if you can't run the ball and play great defense as a young team, then you'll have a good season, but you're not going to win the Super Bowl. Go ahead, Ryan.
And I was going to say about the Chargers-Pats matchup, I don't know how you guys feel about Pro Football Focus. Some people would swear by it. Some people loathe it to death. But just they show up on the broadcast, the Chargers offensive line. And it's like three dudes that are like not just 31 out of 32. It's like there's extra guys that qualify when there's injuries. And it's like 38 of 39. And then it's 41 of 41. And it's like 37 of 39. It's like, oh my goodness, do they have the worst linemen It felt like what you would be playing if you were all backups, except they weren't. And so the Patriots attacked that. I think they got 6 or 7 sacks of Herbert. And Herbert's just, again, as the, quote, more experienced guy, is just running for his life and in the pocket just trying to buy an extra count because the offensive line is just getting smacked up front. And again, that's what, to your point, Marcus, what a good defense is going to do. Like, yeah, Herbert's pretty good, but he's not been pretty good if he's on his face half the game. And so, that offensive line was the weakness of the Chargers, and the Patriots exploited that.
You brought up Pro Football Focus, and I had to, we're almost out of time, but I had to bring this up. I don't know if you ever heard JJ Watt rant about it, but I agree with his take. I agree where they do a lot of great stuff with the analytics and how many, what's your percentage at left tackle versus right tackle and, your snaps. And like, they do a lot of great stuff. I think their grading is off, and it's not really their fault. It's because if you don't have the playbook and know exactly what they're supposed to do on that play, how are you going to grade them kind of thing? And that's what JJ Watt said. Like, how can you grade them and know that what they did right? And he brought up a play where they graded a left tackle and said he didn't have allowed any sacks, and then he showed a clip where he allowed a sack in the game. It's like, well, how did you not see that? So that's kind of my take on that. I think they do a lot of great stuff, but there are some things that they have weaknesses in. But all right, that's going to do it for us. We will be back on Wednesday night at 9 p.m. talk more Bucs. But until next time, fire the cannons.